thick of things. This has been a very long day and a very, very enriching discussion so far. My modest role in this discussion is to spotlight some of the changes in dementia prevention and management with three very elite speakers and panelists. I could have begun the session throwing stats around how cases get misdiagnosed, they get late diagnosis, but instead I want to begin with one encouraging sign that you have seen in your respective fields about dementia prevention and management that was not around, let's say, a decade ago. Let's begin with that, and then we'll take the conversation from there. So maybe, Shyam, I'll begin with you, and here you go, ma'am.
Yeah, I think I'd say two significant changes in the last about 5-10 years, which are very encouraging. Number one is that a couple of decades ago, you talk to anybody related to dementia, the focus was on the person with dementia. Now, the significant change that's happening is people are beginning to realize that it's not just the person with dementia, it's also the family caregiver, the immediate family caregiver. So there is a shift to include and make it centric to the immediate family caregiver, because that was going under the radar. So this is significant. The other one that I've noticed is that even a little more than a decade back, there was almost a sense of fatalism. There's not much that you can do, right? So if it's going to happen, it's going to happen, and the cure is still a long way away. But now the conversation is there is a lot that we can do from a much younger age to defer the symptoms showing up, or even to prevent in some cases. So I think both of these are very positive signs.
Excellent start.
Thank you, Ashok. I will talk about it clinically. The awareness definitely is increasing. And I think that is not only to people with dementia and their families, which Shyam has already said. I think there are various other players who are also doing this. One is the awareness, about 10 or 15 years back. How many pediatricians would you have had in India? But there were hardly any geriatricians. Now, this aspect of geriatrics being a specialty and being seen as an important role in many, and the department of geriatrics in many of the hospitals and in the medical education is one, and the awareness of old age psychiatry, mental health, that they are also prone to other things is the second one, including dementia. The third thing, other player is, I think that is to do with the system. Other players are, I think, the social media. I think the social media had a great confusion, if I remember 20 years back, between understanding what is dementia, what is being intellectually challenged, and what is a mental health issue. And they often confused all the three and put all of them together, and then named it under being crazy. But now we understand more and more that dementia has something to do with aging, and what is aging, people live longer, and there are good representations and valid representations, and people who take recommendations and ideas from people who are neurologists, psychiatrists, about the various stages of dementia. And social media is a very, very powerful. Rather than one doctor or one NGO going out to screening and having awareness camps, a movie on dementia, whether it is the Western movie, Hollywood movies, or the Bollywood movies, they have made, and even nowadays I think there are quite a lot of short movies on the cell phone, which are doing quite good. And so people understand. For example, I don't think people who worked with us, somebody, a driver or somebody, now they talk about it. So that's a big, huge leap. So I am sure when somebody's mother becomes ill or father becomes ill, with dementia, they would definitely seek help.
Got it. Yes.
So, thank you, sir. So, I fully concur with my fellow panelists, but I would also like to add few things. In terms as a clinician hat, if I wear, it is also to identify and understand new pre-dementia syndromes. Like when Ronald Peterson actually found out about or described about mild cognitive impairment. And then you have now what is known as the subjective cognitive decline. And then you have something known as the motoric cognitive risk syndrome. So you have a whole lot of pre-dementia syndromes, much before the dementia actually sets in. And apart from that, there is also a new idea about this. I'm quite excited, as all of you are, on the blood-based biomarkers. Phospho-tau 217, which is a amyloid-dependent tau-based biomarker. You have other non-amyloid-dependent, as well, like phospho-tau 205. So this is something which has given us an opportunity to maybe predict illnesses. And the aspects of that, there's a significant negative predictive value, and the fact that FDA has approved it, and the fact that we have two different cutoffs. And if you're negative for biomarkers to begin with, you have very less risk or less chance of developing dementia. So these are some things which, of course, you have to look at on a case-by-case basis, but still, these are some things which are exciting. In addition, about the PET, something which is I'm quite interested about is we do not have amyloid or tau PET right now in India as such, but if you look at, we are going to get tracers, we are going to get amyloid PET, we are going to get tau PET, we are also going to get the synaptic, looking at the SV2F kind of PET, which actually looks at the synaptic loss. So I'm sure that these are some things which clinicians, armamentarium has grown over time to make a better and tailored diagnosis.
Got it. I want to double click on mild cognitive impairment because I think it's not understood well at all from, let's say, a symptomatic perspective, Dr. Bharat. And my question is to you. In your clinical practice, I would assume that a lot of people who come to you are already past the stage of mild cognitive impairment. What is it that everyone in the room can take away from a cognitive or behavioral change point of view, from when they should start taking some signs a little more seriously than, just passing an offhand remark about, oh yeah, nowadays, so-and-so it's probably to do with old age. Like, what signs should we look out for?
I do not know whether it is for this audience because they all seem to be going much deeper than even they are talking about prevention, whereas I'm a clinician. Right. But the people who come into my clinic are people where their parents or their spouse has already reached the stage of moderate or severe dementia. Often, either it is that because they have the burden of care increases significantly because the person has lost ability to be independent in their daily activities or in their instrumental activities of going out or even doing their other chores, like if the mother has been doing the cooking. So we talk about the executive functions because we don't think about executive function only in the neuropsychological testing. Even making a pulao is an executive function because you have to follow a recipe, a method, and the sequence. So either many of these things, when they are lost, they come to us. They come to us in a mild level. MCI very rarely, unless they are highly educated, and then they talk about, we also talk about subjective memory loss, then the worried people who come to us. But mild dementia people walk into a psychiatrist clinic is because they are having behavioral and psychological symptoms like, suspecting others of stealing their things, or becoming very restless, or sexually disinhibited. So many, or aggression, agitation. So many of these things in the mild dementia, they are present even in moderate and severe dementia. What people need to understand is often the question is asked, why it's a neurodegenerative disease? Why you as a psychiatrist are sitting here and taking care of these people? About 90 to 95% of the people throughout their lifespan of dementia, starting from mild dementia, can either have transient behavioral and psychological symptoms, or they can have long-lasting behavioral and psychological symptoms. That's the reason why we get into the picture. And we may not be able to help the person with dementia a lot, but what Shyam was talking, we do a lot of work with the families, how to deal with them, find out techniques even from them, and also we do a lot of support. I think that's our main role. So often people, the only thing I can tell this audience is psychiatrists are one among the multidisciplinary team, and we have other partners like the nurses, the support NGOs, it could be, and of course the caregivers, professional and non-professional family caregivers in the whole setup. There are multiple partners, physiotherapists, occupational therapists, and any number of them.
And I think that's
in
a
the
good
care of-
segue for me to ask Shyam. I mean, Dr. Bharat spoke about professional caregivers and family caregivers, and I think Dementia India Alliance's work spans both of these spectrum. What have you noticed are, let's say, the key challenges that each of them face? And I can imagine them to be very different, but in your experience, what are the key points of distinction?
Yeah, they are different, of course, but also common in some ways. Let me take the family caregivers first. Some things that are not in the public eye. For the last couple of decades, a lot of NGOs, and we do a bit of that. How do we help, like Shrikala was saying, how do we help the families, manage the person with dementia better? But I think the bigger problem that escapes the public eye is how do family caregivers manage themselves better, right? And that gets completely ignored. So there are 4 or 5 things that happen. Number one, you care for a person with terminal cancer situation. And before the inevitable end, your parent or whoever you're taking care of at least blesses you. Say, you've done a good job, you've taken good care of me. Here, what I've noticed from my own personal experience of caring for my father and many hundreds of people that I've had the opportunity of dealing with, talking to, the longer the caregiving, the more your exposure to indifference or abuse. Both can be debilitating, right? So you don't, the closure doesn't come in the form of, blessings. It comes in the form of abuse or indifference. Problem number one, it's a big one to deal with. The second one, what you get plenty of, there's no shortage of, is unsolicited advice. People who will not be able to manage that kind of a situation for an hour find it very easy to advise you. And dealing with that becomes quite stressful, as you can imagine, right? The third thing is mental health of the immediate family, right, who are doing the caregiving. Their own mental health sometimes manifests many years after the person with dementia is no more, in forms of depression and so on and so forth. Or young kids in the family seeing dysfunctional behavior from grandparents, what impact it has on their mental health. The fourth one is probably linked to the third thing is family breakdown, divorces, other kinds of complications. And finally, from the family caregiver point of view, I think when you focus on the person with dementia, generally, on an average, give or take, you will have 2 close family members who are discharging the caregiving duties. So actually, when you're dealing with the person with dementia, you're only dealing with 1/3 of the problem. The other 2 are not, being dealt with, and therefore that focus. Coming to the formal caregivers, or what we call the professional caregivers, emotional, so most of them are between the ages of 18 and 25. These are largely female, young girls. They come from very underprivileged backgrounds, very few family role models, etc., etc. Most of their friends are in college having fun. You take a 19-year-old who's spending all their time with a person with dementia, and what toll it takes on their psyche. So this is one that escapes the public view. The second one is, of course, that you're skilled, but you're viewed not as a nurse. You're viewed as a sort of a helper. And this is the truth of the situation. We find that taking quite a bit of toll. It leads to attrition. People don't want to continue in that profession. Third, they are poorly paid and not much dignity associated with that profession. So we in Dementia India Alliance and a lot of other people are working to correct that, but it's going to take time as a country. And last, but not the least, I would say, is when they have or experience success with the person that they are caring for, that success is neither observed nor applauded. It probably happens at 1 in the morning when the person is refusing to go to sleep, has restless leg syndrome, and this person is managing to overcome that situation. Nobody is there to observe or applaud it. So I think these are some of the, while they become the dignity protectors and they become the emotional backbone of the family, they go largely unapplauded.
And thank you for spotlighting that or painting that picture for us, because what you said about, things, it being such a thankless kind of a vocation, and yet to, dig in and continue to deliver that is where I think the highest form of human nobility can come from. But as an aside, just an off-the-cuff question on that. I think it's known that we are short on caregivers. From your sort of years of experience and deployment, etc., is there a timeline that, let's say, organizations like DI are looking forward to when, there is like a collective, understanding that by so-and-so year, we would have trained enough number of caregivers to take care of the dementia burden? I can imagine it being a very subjective answer, but what can we look forward to when India will be self-sufficient in caregiving?
See, curriculum is not the problem. Trainers are not the problem. There's an abundance. Who wants to come into this profession? That's the question. This profession is not an attractive profession for obvious reasons, right? And therefore, we've got to fix that problem, which means that we've got to work together with a whole lot of other stakeholders to make this an attractive profession, a dignified profession, an aspirational profession, right? Compensation is just one part of it, but it's the way we treat them, the kind of dignity we give them, the place we give them in society. So there is a huge amount that a lot of stakeholders have to do, and not least of all the families themselves, the way they receive them and treat them. But there's a lot of education of other stakeholders rather than training of the caregivers. That's the least of the problems.
Got it. And I think, sorry, you wanted to add?
I think one of the things which you need to understand the burden of the people who are looking after this elderly is, I think as you said, the attrition is a very big issue. So even if you have enough resources, you train enough resources, they don't want to, after some time, they themselves are burnt out. And there is no emotional connect with the person with whom they are working. Many NGOs do not want them to stay in the same house, and they keep on shifting them. I think these are all issues which makes even training any number becomes a challenging in India. And how many people can afford to have a person who can look after them round the clock is the other side of the story. Okay, because in a head injury ward, one nurse is enough to look after 3 people who have head injury. But for one person with dementia, there are 3 people in 24 hours to look after. So look at the manpower you need.
Yeah. And I want to now come to, let's say, reducing the healthcare burden, which is where I think deep researchers like Dr. Thomas have a very active role to play. Dr. Thomas, I want to begin with, you already spoke about the different kind of advancements in technology that, are exciting and interesting. But, I think there is also one stark reality about deployment of, cutting edge research into real world clinical settings. That's where I think companies, like many of the, companies that have come and spoken before us, companies which get excited by science, like I would count us among, a few of them to put our hand. I think 5C, there's like Biopeak outside, quite a few of them, right? What is a challenge, and like in your years of experience, let's say maybe from the last decade, what do you think is a real challenge or gap that exists between going from research labs to on-ground clinical deployment, and what can be done about it? Or have you seen any change in that regard, wherein, things have gotten faster adoption?
I think that's a very important question. Thanks for asking that. There's always a bench to bedside kind of delay which people tell, but I'm sure that to share the excitement of everyone here, the biomarker space is kind of growing significantly. And that's where we have Professor Deepak here from ISC CNS. We have our lead of the biomarkers, Dr. Anish in the crowd. So the CBR, IAC, there's a lot of big ecosystem being built around the plasma biomarkers. That's for one. The second thing is also, that is also adding to it is people are getting awareness significantly now. People are being aware that if there's a subjective cognitive impairment that they have to get evaluated. Now the space like Ivory, so Ivory is bringing in cognitive assessments, which you otherwise would require a trained neuropsychologist to do, but something you can do at home. So is it something like a metabolic marker, something like a cognitive marker you can actually get done at home? And with that index of suspicion, you can actually come to a qualified healthcare professional and maybe take the pathways ahead. So I think there are a lot of scope in this areas when we all use softwares and we all are kind of looking at screens all time. Most of the kind of data is digital, and this change in the digital signature is something can be significantly used. So digital biomarkers, that's where I feel would be the next blood in terms of looking at it.
I think another exciting or sort of good nugget you threw is bench to bedside. I think that's where I think the rubber meets the road, right? So I had given my fellow panelists one mini homework, and we are almost towards the end of time. The homework was each one of us in this room, irrespective of whether we are connected to or not connected with healthcare, can do something tonight or tomorrow morning to, maybe take one mini step towards reducing, the healthcare burden of dementia that will hit us in the coming decade. Again, from your work, one, task that I want everyone to take away like 3 nuggets from each of you. What can they do either tonight or tomorrow morning? However small the step might be. Because I think change has to begin somewhere. And I think my one takeaway of attending all these sessions has been the level of complexity that is there and across all these subjects, like multimodal, assessments and readings. And, somebody spoke about how gut microbiome readings are not. I think these are all complex. But I think change can begin with like one small step tomorrow morning. What is
You
that?
want us to tell the audience?
Yes,
or
yes. Tell the audience. One little mini step.
Should I say?
Yeah, please. We've got
Go
2.5
home
minutes.
with an idea that dementia is a neurodegenerative disease with significant, almost 92 to 95% of them needing a mental health professional, a psychiatrist, and then subsequently a lot of work either with the social worker or the nurse or other people. So it's just not neurology or neurodegeneration. And do not reduce it only to, I'm sorry to say in such a thing, biomarkers and other things. Think about the person.
Yes, Shyam.
Yeah, I just say this. If you happen to have somebody with dementia in the neighborhood, please do not advise the family. They are dealing with it every minute of every day of every hour, and for years. They don't want one more piece of advice. If at all possible, give the family a little bit of respite. Tell them to go and watch a movie, tell them to go get some shopping done, tell them to attend a concert, take care of the person for 3 or 4 hours. I think that will be worth a lot more than all the advice. Second, please encourage them to seek help. Help is available. We have a national helpline in Dementia India Alliance. It's a free service. Anybody can call up 9 to 6, Monday to Saturday. We have an online clinic, DEM clinic. You don't have to go to the outpatient or a clinic to see a psychiatrist or a counselor. From your drawing room, log into demclinic.com and you'll get access to an expert. So encourage them to seek help. There is a lot more help available than was 20 years ago or even 10 years or 5 years ago. So that's all that I would say.
Got it. Thank you, Dr. Thomas.
I'll maybe quickly finish
In all languages.
by telling that Professor Deepak should have more such conferences, because science has proven that gossiping is healthy, networking is good, and that can prevent dementia.
If Surumya and Professor Deepak are around, that's the final note for you. So thank you once again, everyone. This was really meaningful, and I hope all of you have like one mini homework to do tomorrow morning. Yeah.